First, though, February 8th was a day that many had marked on their calendars. It was the day when 62 USDA reports that had been in limbo due to the government shutdown were finally released. Tredas commodity trader Doug Simon joined me on the show to help digest the information and hit some of the major points.
Well, the report, that was probably the most widely anticipated. Farmers don't usually like USDA reports, but they were really asking, hey, what's going to be in this report? Are we going to have anything bullish in there? And the report was really pretty boring. It didn't come out, it came out really close to expectations. The privates had been looking at all the numbers and trying to anticipate what was going to go on before, and the numbers really came in close to what the expectations were. The big numbers, Nebraska, 192 on the corn yield, which was their record. I think Iowa did not have a record, but if you look at the other states, Illinois and Ohio, Indiana, they had records this year. So national crop yield was at 176, which is up there. It's a big number. They did drop the production about 400 million bushels from that high number they had in September, and it's down about 200 million bushels from the last report. So we did have a drop in the production, which is something I think people were anticipating with a little lower yield, a little lower acres. And then on the soybean side, Nebraska was 59 bushel on the yield, which is number 2 in the country. It's, I think, just after, I think Iowa was 65, and Indiana and Ohio had records. Iowa didn't have a record this year, but so we had been a little lower on the production and the acres on the soybean side. And interestingly enough, we cut the production there in, on the soybean side from where we were earlier as well. The numbers were a little bit higher in the kind of the September, and so we've come down just a little bit on those numbers as well.
And worldwide, what were some of the things that stuck out to you?
That was the biggest changes. When you look at the soybean crop going down in Brazil from 122 million metric tons down to 117, and CONAB, one of the Brazilian estimators, came out today, and I think they're at 115 million metric tons. But that's a pretty sizable drop, and then they also cut the Argentine and Paraguay crops by 1 million metric tons. So you had a pretty good drop in production there. Interestingly enough, they also boosted the stocks in Brazil by 6 million metric tons on their old crop, and they cut the Argentine stocks by 10 million metric tons. So when you looked at those net changes down there, they ended up dropping their stocks by about 3 million metric tons. So fortunately, we've kind of pulled some of the production and some of the stocks out of Brazil. They also cut Chinese demand by 2 million metric tons. And I think last time I was here, I talked about FAS, the Foreign Ag Services, said we've been up to about 103 million metric tons. So we've lost about 15 million metric tons out of Chinese demand. So that really hurts, and that's, when you look at that drop in Chinese demand, that's about 600 million bushels of imports. And you look at the big increase in the U.S. carryover up to 900 million bushels, that's a large part of that increase in the carryover.
And also, these reports gave us our first real look at winter wheat. What do we see here? 110-year
low in winter wheat. I think last year when I talked about it, it was like a 90-year low, back when my grandfather was born. So it's been a long time ago. So it's going to leave, when you look at those acres and you look at the production, even though those acres are lower, they're kind of anticipating that production will be about the same as last year, but they're showing our exports on wheat being a little better. And we'll actually see a drop, in the carryover on wheat for next year, which actually is a little more constructive for the wheat market.
Okay, reports have been released, so where do we go from here? Doesn't look like we're going to be dealing with another shutdown, so that's good. But we've always got trade to focus on, planting. We had Luke Beckman here last week. He said the safrinha crop in Brazil was a big story. What are you and some of your colleagues tracking now?
You're looking at rainfall still in Brazil. They're having some pretty good rains this week, and they're still showing normal to maybe slightly above normal precip going forward. That Brazilian safrinha second crop that they plant, it's in a tropical area. You're moving into a drier season. So the correlation between February moisture and final crop size isn't great, but we'll really have to watch it as we go into March and April. They've got about 40% of it planted versus 20% typically. So you're going to be watching that weather down there, because that has a big impact. Their corn yields are more variable on that safrinha crop than, say, like their soybean yields are. So that's going to be important. And then you go into the U.S. I mean, we're moving into our weather period here, where we're going to start worrying about how much we're going to plant, what the growing season is going to be like. El Nino to neutral conditions seem to be prevailing, which tend to be more favorable. But then I've got people asking me, they're hearing about drier, longer periods in the summer. Is that going to come forward? We're just going to have to wait till we get out here a little bit further to see that. But obviously those acres, what we plant, what we're allowed to plant based on the weather, and how our summer weather is going to have a big impact on us. When you look at those world corn numbers and drop out China, we've tightened those things up. which gives you a little more hope on the corn balance sheet, which is good. The soybean sheet is pretty heavy, but there's some optimism. We should be able, if you look at the prices seasonally, whether it's oil or corn or soybeans or cattle, you tend to have seasonal lows about now here, tend to have some rallies going forward into the spring, which is good. Not wildly bullish, but hey, there's some hope out there because we've sold off recently on corn and hopefully see some seasonality, but we want to be selling as we get any positivity going forward here.